back again, now subnetting a Class B license. Now this is going to be a little bit different because we've got 2 octets to play with instead of 1 octet to play with like we did in the Class C license. So instead of 8 bits to play with, we have 16. Oh boy. So if I borrow 2 bits, the first thing I want to do is indicate that on my worksheet, and also, counting from the left, go over 2 columns. So I'm going over 1, 2, and then I'm going to highlight that or circle that depending on what tool you're using. If I have 2 bits borrowed, I have 14 left because remember I've got 16 bits to play with a Class B license. And if I always think back to the default subnet mask, so the default subnet mask of a Class B is 255, 255, 00, and it's those 00s that I can play with. So that each 0 represents 8 bits, so there's 16 bits I can play with. The number of subnets is 2 to the bits borrowed, or 4. The number of hosts per subnet is 2 to the bits left, or 2 to the 14th power, which is 16,384. So we're not going to have very many subnets, but boy, can we have a lot of hosts per subnet in this example. The subnet mask, again from my table, and this is a little bit tricky because I've only borrowed 2 bits, I'm going to play with that 3rd octet, okay, of my subnet. So I've got my subnet mask being 255, 255, and then from the table 192. I didn't play with those last bits at all. We're going to do that later when we get to 9, 10, 11, and 12 bits borrowed. So expanding that to figure out our CIDR, I have 255, 255, 1920. I expand that out. I have all 1s with the 255, and then from my table, remember my table is just kind of like an expansion of what it would be if I had a 1 in that binary position and then all the rest zeros. So I would have 1, 1 in my position for 192, followed by zeros. And then of course the last octet is all zeros. So I get a CIDR number of 18 because if I counted the bits there, I had 18. Or I do the shortcut, I've got 2 octets of 8, so 8 times 2 is 16, and I borrowed 2 bits. There's my 18. My increment from the table is 64, and remember I'm going to use that to add to each one of the subnets to get the next subnet. And remember, I'm only going to have 4 on this one, so it's going to be a real short one. So I do that, and remember, because I'm only borrowing 2 bits, I'm only affecting that 3rd octet. Remember, I can't play with the 1st and 2nd one. Those are already reserved, so to speak. But I can play with the 2nd and 3rd one, and if I borrow 2 bits, I'm playing with that 3rd octet. So I'm going to add 64 in the 3rd octet. Remember my broadcast address, now this is a little bit tricky, is 1 less than my subnet address. So the broadcast address for the 172.16.00 subnet is going to be 1 less than this one, the 172.16.64.0. So if, as I look at that, you can see that 1 less than 64.0 is 63.255. 1 less than 128.0 is 127.255. And you got it, 1 less than 192.0 is 191.255. And then, of course, the last one is 255.255. So a little bit trickier. I kind of think of this as if I'm trying to add inches and feet, or if I'm trying to do some time things with minutes and seconds. I kind of think of it like that because the octets are separate, like the minutes and hours would be, or like the inches and feet would be. So if you can kind of use that as an analogy on how you add those things and how you subtract both time and measurement, maybe that'll help you out a little bit on this. Otherwise, study it a little bit and I think you'll get the hang of it. Again, my host ranges are going to be 1 more than my subnet address and 1 less than my broadcast address. And remember, I've got 16,000 of those things I'm going to have in here. So my addresses, I just added 1 to each one of the subnet addresses. So I have the 0.1, 64.1, 128.1, and 192.1. And then I subtracted 1 from those broadcast addresses and ended up with the .63.254, and really all of those, I kind of even copied over all this broadcast addresses here, and then I just took 1 less from them and made that a 254 instead of a 255. There you have it, a Class B license with 2 bits borrowed.